All right, started.
All right, today is December 9th, 2020. This is the Container Storage Interface Community Meeting. So we'll just go down our agenda for today. I guess, Hemant, would you like to start? Is Hemant here?
I don't see Hemant.
Okay, maybe then Ben, we can go down your items first and we'll see if Hemant comes back.
Okay, yeah, I imagine he'll turn up a few minutes late. So my action item from the meeting from last week was to create a 2.0 tracking issue, so I've done that. I just started throwing stuff in there that I was able to think of. As I outlined at the top message there, we don't actually plan on a CSI 2.0 spec, but if one were to ever happen, we have a bunch of ideas that we'd want to put into that version. So this is a place to collect them so that, you know, if our future selves decide to do a 2.0 version, we have a laundry list of things to go do at the same time.
Sounds good. Do you want to actually go through and discuss these, or
I wanted people to be aware that there is a tracking issue now. If you have ideas, just stick them in here. I don't know if we'll have a lot of discussion, but yeah, the point is just to have a place to write them down so they're not forgotten. Because we do have a tendency to be like, oh, we would like to fix that in 2.0, but then we forget. Then we forget to write that down, and we'll probably forget about it when 2.0 comes around.
So basically, all the issues will be added to this one issue?
The idea is to use that one issue as just a laundry list. And then
would that be better to use like a project board? Would that look better?
Well, so we had talked about, I don't know if you were there last week, Sheng, but
yeah, probably. I probably forgot.
That idea came up, and the thing is, we don't want to give people the impression that we're actually planning to do a 2.0 version, because the whole idea is we'd rather avoid it.
Okay.
But if it ever becomes unavoidable, then we'll have a list of things that we would like to knock off at the same time.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for starting that. Next, you have the bidirectional secret handling.
And I'm sorry Assad isn't here for this one because I wanted his opinion in particular, but I'll just, for everyone else's benefit, the way secrets are done in CSI is that like the CO holds all of the secrets and passes them down to the SP in every case. There is no existing RPCs in CSI where the SP generates a secret and then hands it back to the CO. And I was thinking that might be useful, especially at volume creation time, to have a way for SPs to generate secrets and inform the CO of them in some return value, and then have the CO store them. And the thing is, I wasn't around for like maybe the first 6 months of the CSI API design, so I didn't hear the discussions that happened. And so I was wondering if anyone is here who remembers why secrets only ever flow from the CO to the SP and never back in the other direction.
One of the things that we talked about early on was to try to avoid turning the CO into a database for plugins, right? And this, you know, and so we went back and forth a lot, you know, context and attributes fields, and you know, trying to find a happy medium, and where do you draw the line as far as, you know, data that the CO is going to be guaranteed to store on, you know, on behalf of a plugin. So
the two places where we do use the CO as a database is for the volume context and the published context, which is information that the SP passes back, but none of that is treated as secret.
Right. Yeah, and I think at one point we had talked about maybe putting sensitive information, like if we had to put sensitive information somewhere, you know, would it go there? Would it go somewhere else? And we thought, well, you know, in the spirit of avoiding, you know, over-engineering, let's just build what we need, right? And if there's a use case or a set of use cases that strongly argues for secret information in those fields or adjacent to those fields, then maybe we tackle it then. So it sounds like there might be a use case, or maybe we're just speculating that there are use cases.
No. So like the reason this came to my attention is because we were doing a security audit of our own CSI plugin, and people discovered that we were generating CHAP secrets in the plugin, passing them back to the CO in the volume context, and they were getting persisted on Kubernetes unencrypted, and they were getting logged to the logs, like the secrets were. People were like, well, this isn't okay, right? And so we were like, well, okay, so if we want to generate the secrets in the SP, like there's no way to get them stored anywhere safely. They're going to get logged, they're going to get stored in unencrypted form. So the only solution is you have to generate it on the CO side and then push them in. And that's limiting because like that's work for an admin to do or for a user to do, and you can't just make it happen magically without like going outside the CSI paradigm and like having your CSI plugin talk directly to Kubernetes to set up secrets, which we should not be encouraging. So like, yeah, if there was a way to, as part of the volume context or part of the published context, also pass back secret pieces, like secret volume context and secret published context, then we would be able to solve these kinds of problems.
I guess, if we want to consider adding this to the spec, do we know that all COs are going to have the ability to store secure, sensitive data?
Well, we have COs passing secrets in, which is, of course, an optional capability. The CO doesn't have to avail itself of that, but if it is, then presumably it's keeping that information secure somehow. I mean, I don't know if we have generalized requirements on CO's ability to actually keep secret data secret. I thought that the whole point was at the CSI spec level, we're only saying this is something that should be kept secret, but how you do that is unspecified. You could do it very poorly and still meet the spec. But like the things like, the published context just getting logged to a log file, like that's a reasonable thing to do because there's not supposed to be sensitive information in the published context. But, if you want to have sensitive information in there, then you have a problem. So I don't know. I wanted to find out about the history and ask, like, if we did have a proposal to return secrets from crate volume and return secrets from controller publish volume alongside that volume context and that published context, would there be any strong opposition, or would we just is it just a matter of designing it and working through all the details?
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can find, I think there was a PR where there was some discussion on that. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes kind of digging around for that, because
I did notice
it's been a while.
That like down at the gRPC machinery level, there is the ability to have secrets in return fields, and the gRPC client does scrub secrets from logs in both directions. And so somebody at some point was thinking about secrets being bidirectional, but then we only ended up implementing the one direction. So yeah, I just, if it wasn't going to be too big of a burden to just extend the specs so that you can also return secrets, then I'm not sure that I will propose something, but we're going to consider it. I mean, there would be a lot of work on the Kubernetes side, because then you'd have to, in the volume attachment, you'd have to have a volume attachment secrets or something, and, extra yuckiness.
Is this anything that's been discussed by SIG Storage, or is this the first place it's coming up?
I'm bringing it up here for the first time, as far as I know. Just because this is a CSI sort of design idea, and I didn't have the history.
So are you thinking volume create, or are you also considering other calls?
Create volume and the controller publish would be the two places. Those are the two places you can currently return data. So the proposal could be you may also return secret data in those two places, and then in addition, so in create volume, Kubernetes shoves that into the PV, so you might have to also shove information into a secret at after create volume, and then controller publish generates the volume attachment object, and you might also have to have a secret there.
I guess, do you know of a reason why a secret will be generated at the attach time and not just the create time?
Perhaps if the secret was node specific, because at create time, you don't know which nodes it's going to be published to. And if you want to generate a different secret for every node so that you can fence nodes that get compromised, you might want to be able to generate per node secrets at a publish time so that you can revoke those secrets on a per node basis when there's a security problem.
All right, cool. I mean, it sounds like, James, you'll look at the past issues to see if there were any major issues that we discussed in the past about this. And then I guess, Ben, you could look into if you actually need this and work on it.
If there's openness to this idea, I might, go to the next level and actually design it and make a more concrete proposal. I was just wanted to test the waters first.
Yeah, at least it sounds like so far it was mostly just because we didn't have the use case for it.
Okay. Cool.
For what it's worth, I have a use case very similar to Ben's, so definitely +1.
Awesome.
Who was that?
Nicholas.
Nicholas, okay. Good to know.
All right. Looks like Hamat is still not here. Was anyone able to ping Hamat?
Hamat, where are you? I'm pinging him right now.
Okay, awesome.
Slack says he's online, but no immediate response.
All right. I guess, were there any other topics that anyone wanted to also discuss? Did we conclude on all the previous meeting topics?
Except for the ones that are in Hamat's name, yes.
Yeah.
I think those two that are in Hamat's name were carryovers.
Oh, what about Jan? Restoring. I guess we kind of concluded that we need to push this down to the plugin.
Yeah, this is one of those things that could be made better in a 2.0, but given the way it was written in 1.0, there's no good way to fix this. It's just seems like we just have to do the right thing. And I captured that in the 2.0 tracking issue. I mentioned that if there's ever a 2.0, we should change the way that we do restores from smaller size to have a clear capability. And
okay. Let's see. From 2 meetings ago, did we conclude on this 128 bytes issue?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so then we just have to go send out a PR to change the spec. Is that right?
Well, was it just for one specific field you were going to change it, or were we going to try to change it in general?
So there is a conclusion section.
Paths, node ID. Yeah. Yeah, the danger is if we change the spec, COs that are talking to older SPs may attempt to send a longer string, and the older SP might be unable to deal with it because it conforms to the older spec and could get an error. So it's not that we want to prevent SPs from accepting longer strings. It's just that COs can't depend on SPs supporting longer strings. But that
I guess we might
put a note in
have
there.
to, maybe, yeah.
I mean, I would be very surprised if there were SPs out there that like will barf if you send them a 129 byte string, because that's a weird thing to do. But that's what the spec says, so you never know.
Okay. I guess if Hamad is not here and we don't have any more topics, then we can end the meeting. I guess we'll
he just
need
replied
to
on
maybe.
Slack. He just replied on Slack. He forgot about the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he'll join.
Yeah, we'll give him maybe a minute. But I think there were definitely some of the topics that Hamad wanted to discuss, I think could impact Windows potentially. So
oh yeah, the group stuff.
Yeah,
is gonna be Windows
it's good
stuff.
that Deep is here.
While we're waiting for him to join, should we talk about the timing of the next meeting?
Okay.
It's supposed to be in 4 weeks, right? Would that put us comfortably after the holidays with no conflicts?
I believe so. The next meeting I see is January 6th.
Okay.
There might be some folks still maybe on holiday, but
sorry, I
You made it, Hamad?
yeah.
Welcome. Yeah, we were just waiting for you because we finished my topics.
Right. So we didn't finish. I know I was supposed to open at least a draft of a PR for GID handling, and I didn't get a chance. And the last time we talked about our just pull up our conclusion was that we can add it as an optional capability, but we have to kind of discuss we didn't have conclude quite yet actually, but okay. So new capability for driver to advertise, it supports efficient application of GID, but and if available, kubelet will defer to storage provider, and storage provider must handle. Now the question that we had was like, how do we present it into the, how do we represent this in the RPC, like node publish volume, node stage volume? How do we represent that data? Like, should it be string or should it be something else?
Well, there was the question of like, if it's Windows, it's not going to be an integer, right? It's going to be a string of some kind.
Right.
And there was the question of, do we want to have like some sort of a union struct where, you know, you get something on Linux and you get something else on Windows, and we don't support anything other than Linux and Windows? Because one of the nice aspects of the current CSI spec is there is nothing that is Windows specific in it. It just kind of works on Windows, which means that you could in theory add support for a third operating system without changing the spec. But the moment we start putting like OS specific union structs in there, then you lose that property.
Yes, that's true, but we don't have anything Linux specific also. So there was
I guess though, is there like someone is at some point down the stack, someone is going to have to parse these strings and make it Linux or Windows specific.
Yeah, like read this GIDs and make it as a mount option string, like the whole mount option string. However, the storage provider supports that. I mean, it's not Linux specific. It is how the storage provider implements it. Like two storage providers may compose different strings actually when they actually apply that as a mount option.
Well, what matters is the client that will ultimately be accessing the storage, right? Like a Windows client will be representing groups as Windows groups, which have names and SIDs. And a Linux client will be representing groups as a list of integers. And yeah, the storage system may or may not be compatible with one or both, or may not care.
Yeah, but I was just saying that the string formation, like how it applies the mount option and when the mount command is issued, it depends on both the operating system and the storage provider. So our options are, it seems to me that like we could, and we also wanted to keep the possibility open for passing UIDs. Pass it now or pass it later, but it's something we want to leave it out. But if we have two different fields, optional field, like say let's say string, like UID and GID differently, that works. Or we can hide it behind I think Michelle suggested the idea of using any like one-off and put a in the type, so that, but that leaves us a problem that I think there was a problem that Ben was talking about. If we use one-off, then
Yeah, if we use a one of, then we have to specifically enumerate the Linux way of doing it and the Windows way of doing it. And if we ever want a third way of doing it, we need to modify the spec.
right.
Like I think we kind of have to enumerate it, right? Because if we just give an opaque string, the plugin needs to know what format that string is going to be in to be able to parse it.
Well, I mean, I don't agree. Like the way we handle publish paths and target paths is that it's defined to be a path that's meaningful on the system where you're running. And we know that on Windows paths look different, and that's not a big deal, right? You just say, oh, it's a Windows path, so I'm going to treat it like a Windows path. Like
but I guess with like,
you could use
so
the
with,
same tricks and say it's a group ID, and you know that on Windows group IDs are strings that look, you know, like Windows group IDs, and just sort of leave it, you know, a little vague enough that you could bring in another operating system without having to rewrite the spec.
I think the issue is Hamad is saying that some storage providers may not use the like GID directly. Like they may have some way of translating GID into something else.
Well, yeah. So this is the point I was going to raise, was that I really want to see us leave enough flexibility that, like, if better technology comes along, that we can solve the underlying problem in a better way. So like Kubernetes, or not Kubernetes, any CO should be able to express its intent clearly, so that if the SP can do it better, you get that better result. But if it can't, Kubernetes can use the hacks that it uses today. And then if in the future we have a better hack, that we can still use that. And in particular, I'm thinking of, like, you know, UID shifting mounts or something along those lines coming along that we will want to use instead.
So the the GID, like for example, what I was referring to is the GID. If we pass it as a string, the storage provider will want to compose the mount option like -GID equal to the whatever the string that was there, and some other storage provider will compose that differently, like -group ID or something else. They may not call it GID, or they may call it something else, and yeah, apply that on the mount option. So so not necessarily interpret the GID differently, but it's like how they use it is could be different. Like Ben also, that also leaves us a possibility that a storage provider may itself change the permission. Suppose it doesn't support like applying GID as a mount option, then it can maybe change recursively chon chmod file and apply it, which kubelet does it currently. But if we pass GID to the storage provider, there's nothing stopping storage provider from like
Yeah, and the storage
that.
provider may have a way more efficient way of doing that recursive chown, right? Like they could do it server side instead of client side, which could be a lot faster. I don't know. I guess what my hope would be here is that the way I see this is like as an optimization, and like we should allow the SPs to advertise that they are able to optimize this particular or have an optimal solution to this problem, and then COs can use it. But then I want to make sure that like when there's an even better solution, that we can just stop using this and switch to the even better thing. So like let SPs say that yes, I'm able to do something better, and then let COs leverage that if they want to. But then if we stop wanting to because we have an entirely better way of doing this, we can just stop using the capability and go to another way. So we want to keep the existing way working. We want to add a new optional better way, and leave the door open for something even better later on if it ever comes to the Linux kernel.
Yeah, okay. But I just want to emphasize that it's not an optimization for some drivers. Like for example, for Azure file, as we talked about, the driver is broken without like if it cannot pass GID to node stage or node publish, then you cannot simply chon chmod files. Actually, kubelet cannot do that because it doesn't support these Unix extensions, and the files, the volume will be unreadable, unwritable by the pod actually. So it's not just an optimization for this class of driver. It's like a necessity.
Well, yeah, but that suggests that like any CO that is coded against the 1.3 spec is going to be, the driver will be broken for that CO, right? Basically, the SP depends on some new feature, and that feature will only be present in CSI 1.4 and later. And so older COs simply won't work with that driver. Like, is that an accurate statement? Like we're basically saying that like some drivers are unable to function unless we enhance the spec, and there's no way to do that in a backwards compatible way. So these new drivers will just only be compatible with versions of the spec that include this change.
Well, they are compatible, like as long as you're running your container as root.
Oh, okay.
Like they work as long as you're running as root, but the moment you choose not to run this container as root, you run into these problems.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the API, and we've got mount flags kind of nested under volume capability. And volume capability is used throughout the spec in a whole bunch of calls, right? Controller calls, node calls. It's part of like the get capacity request call. And what it seems to me like what's being discussed here is that we're somehow going to augment. We're going to first class some kind of credential, right? Or identifier. Maybe identifier is the better word. I don't know, for a user or a group, or both. And I'm wondering how that fits this model, because you don't really know right? Like a UID or GID or something in the context where all these calls are possibly being made, right? So,
well, we would. I agree with you, first of all, but like we don't need to put it down at that level. We could put it only at the level where we do know it. And would that be adequate to say that like
something like supplemental mount flags where some things are first class fields? Like I'm just trying to get my head around what this looks like.
We don't need to think of it as a mount flag. We need to think of it as like here is the UID and GID that needs access when you do the node stage and when you do the node publish. And if you accomplish that through mount flags, great. If you accomplish that through a different mechanism, that's also okay. We happen to know that the existing drivers would do this through mount flags, but as Hemant mentioned, like that you could just do an efficient recursive chown on their storage backend and also achieve the same effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, coming back to the volume capability thing, the reason we didn't want to put into the volume capability is volume capabilities are decided currently at creation time, and they are basically fixed for a volume. Correct, but the GID and UID actually changes based on the workload. So those mount options, those mount flags are not fixed, and that's where the problem comes in, that volume capability as it exists is not suited to represent these.
I wonder if you've got workloads sharing volumes that have, kind of conflicting credentials, whether it's the specs job to handle that, or maybe I don't know. I haven't thought about this problem in a while. There was a bunch of discussion about IDs some number of years ago.
Yeah, well, one of the basic problems is just like if a workload just moves from one node to another, due to the way the container subsystem works, like the UID that container gets can be random.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's not the user's fault. It's just the way that the CO works.
Yeah. Well, something would need to translate, right? Like I think Julian at one point had mentioned some kind of NFS shim driver that they were working on that was actually translating UIDs or something. So.
Yeah, and there's work at the Linux kernel layer to do like shifting bind mounts where, the bind mount performs UID GID shifts if you access it through that mount. But I don't think that stuff has ever merged to the kernel. So like there are better solutions to this problem, but given that we don't have them, we have to do something.
Ben, there's also that the bind mount solution may or may not work for something like for example, you cannot like for Azure file or Samba that doesn't have Unix extensions and things like that. So we don't know like how it's going to work in future. So, but we need a solution.
Well, I thought that the one of the kernel proposals was like a bind mount that layers on top of your other mount and like performs the shifting in the VFS layer before it gets down to the actual mount, and so it would work with something like NFS. But again, given that it hasn't merged, you can't really play with it and see it that easily.
Okay. Looks like James is wrapping. So I just want to I know Saad and James both were like thinking that if we could enhance volume capability, but volume capabilities are fundamentally like unsuitable to represent this actually because of they're fixed once basically volumes are created. So that leaves us with like fields on not either, but pretty much like fields on node stage and node published volume. I think I thought of different RPC call, but then the problem becomes like is because the mounting has to happen at the time the node stage is called, different RPC call doesn't make sense because the remount many mount options are not applied on remount, so remount is not guaranteed to apply the GID. Yeah, so only first mount can apply the GID. we had the similar problem with, I think, SLNX, where Jan found out that applying only first mount can apply SLNX options. Not
So I want to get back to the basic problem where we have drivers now for which the existing CSI spec doesn't provide a mechanism for COs to give enough information to SPs so that they can get access, or so that they can provide access to a container. And this is a Windows specific problem. Is that accurate? No.
No, it's right now it's like one specific driver is Azure file being used on Linux boxes. Or Linux server. So Azure file traditionally doesn't support Unix extensions, and as a result, like chown, chmod doesn't work.
Right. And you said it's basically Samba, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why I have Windows on the brain. So it's Samba, and you're saying you can't implement any Samba-based driver correctly because the chown isn't going to work, and you need to have some sort of GID information communicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is, I guess we just never thought about Samba when designing the CSI protocol, and to make it work at all, yeah, you have to say like, okay, this is the UID and GID of the process that needs access. I don't know. This doesn't feel like a very backwards compatible. I mean, I agree we need to do something, but like I don't know how to do this in a backwards compatible way.
What do you mean by backwards compatible?
Well, let's say so what Haman is saying is like, if you don't do this, it's not going to work. So like, let's say we make some change and we roll 1.4 version of the spec, and Haman releases a new driver that works with Azure File, or whoever's doing the Azure File driver, and it relies on this new thing. But if COs like don't do the right thing, it's just not going to work. So like we have this new required field basically, and new required fields aren't backwards compatible, right? Like by default, it should be optional. So we're going to have a situation where like even after you upgrade, like unless you do some work, it's still going to fail.
I mean, in terms of backwards compatibility, the driver is not like breaking in behavior, right? The driver doesn't work today, it will continue to not work if the CO doesn't support it.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying like it feels like there's a fundamental gap in CSI that we never addressed this, and the only way to address it is to make a new required field.
But is that so? Because then not all drivers might want to support that, or they don't necessarily need it.
Well, no, it's the COs. This is information the CO must supply for this particular driver to work.
Yeah, so it's like.
And so if there's any CO that doesn't supply it, then that driver doesn't work, and then you have a weird, basically a driver that depends on the CO implementing an optional feature, which isn't something that we like, is it?
I don't think there's a precedence for something like that actually, that the CO must support something like this. This must supply this field for this driver to work.
That's why I'm saying it doesn't feel backwards compatible, because yeah, this is a case of this driver will not work with older COs, period.
No, but like people have been running as containers as root, so.
Right, without using this hack, right? Like either the hack is acceptable or it isn't, and if it isn't,
so. But
I think generally when I think about backwards compatibility, I think of like something that used to work and then no longer works, rather than something that, I mean, if something just doesn't work and it continues to not work, I don't think that's a backwards compatibility issue.
Yeah, it never worked properly, so it's not like, strictly speaking, we're gonna break it. It's just that we are gonna introduce an optional field behind optional capability. We are gonna say that if you support this capability, you must supply this field. Otherwise, it's an option. So I think that should be fine. Ben, what do you think? Like, let the driver define a capability, and if it defines it implement that capability, then it must support. Yeah.
The CO must support or the SP must support?
The SP must accept that field. And,
yeah, but then the question is, what does the SP do when faced with a CO that doesn't support the capability? Because there's no concept of a CO capability, right? It's all SP stuff.
Yeah.
So if the CO doesn't know how to speak that language, it's just not going to work. Even if you do have the capability, the CO will ignore it, and it'll just break.
I'm just trying to look into the read-only thing, which is also hidden behind a capability, actually.
But that is specific to the, if the CO wants to get read-only semantics, it has to use that interface to publish the volume. If this is like, if you want it to work at all, you have to do something unusual.
Okay.
So it's not the CO opting into a behavior, it's the CO expecting ordinary behavior and not getting it, unless it uses an optional feature. Which, I mean, I don't, it's not like I have a better answer. I think that we're just kind of in a bad situation here and we have to do something awkward. But I just wanted to make sure that we had understood the nature of the problem. This is really like, this type of driver cannot work without this additional information coming from the CO. And so we just have to figure out how to supply it when possible, and maybe add verbiage to the spec that strongly recommends supplying this or something, anything short of a must. Specifically to address this kind of situation. And then we still have to address, what do we do on, if it's Windows or if it's, Linux. I still don't have an answer for that, but yeah, I do think arguments to node stage and node publish are the right place to supply this information.
So for the controller publish request, we say that just to indicate the SP must publish the volume in read-only mode. So you must set this field false if SP does not have the publish read-only controller capability. This is a required field. So so the field is required, but it's required in all cases. It just the CO must set it to false if it's not there. If the capability
that read-only flag has been around from the beginning.
Yeah. Well,
it's not something we added later.
So I have a question in the Kubernetes context. Will this typically come from the storage class at the time of creation, or?
No, it comes from the pod. The GID, right?
Yeah.
It comes from the pod, GID, like. The GID could change.
The pod tries to mount it. I see.
Yeah, when the pod tries to mount it, and the GID could change depending on which pod is trying to use the volume.
All right. I think in the Azure file case, it was probably used to be documented that the storage class can also specify it. But maybe, yeah, the pod makes a lot more sense.
Hemant, what would we do if there were two different pods accessing a multi-writer volume and but had two different GIDs?
Apparently, it works with Samba actually. So with Azure
only if you use the mount option, not if you try to do the recursive chown.
Yeah,
because the recursive chown will obviously clobber the first guy.
The recursive chown, I think the chmod throws errors actually if you try to do it for Azure file.
I mean, if you try to do it for any sort of multi-writer volume, if the second guy comes in and starts chowning everything while the first guy's still using it, you're going to have big problems.
That is a different thing, but I was just trying to say that the chmod does not work. It throws errors. So.
No, for Samba, I get that. But
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
the reason I'm bringing this up is we got to be careful about how we mention what this field is supposed to be used for, because if we imply that it's acceptable for the SP to do a recursive chown in response to seeing a GID at node stage time, then in a multi-writer case where you have two different writers with two different GIDs, that's not acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the that'll be a user shouldn't, the SP shouldn't use chown if it's a multi-writer and it doesn't support like mount options. The mount options case works, but
I mean,
chown will.
even this is a problem in a single writer case, right?
Yeah. It's a problem right now also, right? Like two pods are trying to use the same volume single writer, or on the, I think, yeah, two pods are trying to use the same volume, and because we do chown on at the mount volume call, not mount device call, that means that it will try to chown the files. So they will something will, either of the pod will be logged out of the volume.
You know, all of this suggests to me that we're missing something fundamental in sort of the design of CSI and how we support, you know, pods gaining access to storage. When you think about these cases of like multiple users with multiple identities sharing access to a volume, like it implies the need to do some sort of a UID GID remapping in the middle. Otherwise, no solution is going to be adequate. So we have all these workarounds. They're like, well, if it's just a single pod, we can do this recursive chown. And well, if it's multiple pods, everyone can just run with the same identity. And all these different hacks to work around the practical limitations that we face. But we don't have a comprehensive solution that says, yeah, it's actually okay for multiple pods on multiple nodes with different identities to share access to a particular volume and just expect it to work. Because that's kind of a hard thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, multi-writer volumes, if you start chowning files, then it won't work. Like, and the single writer, obviously, they don't work right now. And
yeah, and so the mount option actually solves this problem, but like I feel like we kind of have to define the way that this flag works in such a way that the only valid option is to do something like a mount option or a shifting mount that results in the pod getting effective access without affecting any other pods that could also have access simultaneously.
Yeah. So we talked about the efficient, if the driver has a efficient way for providing that access. Like we want to discourage users, discourage storage providers from implementing their own chown, chmod thing.
Yeah,
I agree to that, and we can add some wording into the spec for that actually, and that's something we can like carry on the discussion in the PR when I get a chance to open it. So, but yeah, that's fine. But like if we have to say that, okay, if we had to, I think the first thing that we agree is that we need a capability. Is that correct? Or we just can just introduce optional field without a capability?
Under what circumstances would you not want to supply it? I mean, this is sort of putting a burden on the COs. The CO has to be ready to supply this information, and once the CO has the information, why would it not want to supply it?
How do we know if a SP actually took action on it?
That's where the capability would come in. Yeah. If you need a signal from the SP back to the CO that the SP is using those fields to grant access as the spec suggests, then the CO can disable it, whatever workaround it was using. But if this SP didn't act on those fields, then the CO might continue to want to use whatever workarounds it has.
Right. So, okay, so we need...
That's what the capability is for, but the CO should still supply the values in all cases. There's no reason not to pass them in.
So the thing is that if CO already did CH on chmod, then why should CO supply that field? We don't want storage providers to mistakenly, like, you know, like again, double recursive, do the same work twice.
Wouldn't it be the case that once the SP started asserting the new capability, that Kubernetes would never use that hack again if it's all the capability was there, and would just leave it to that particular driver? So for a particular volume, it's always owned by a particular CSI driver, and the capability should be unchanging.
So if the Kubernetes is not going to check, so the only thing that CO will do is like, okay, if it will supply always, but whether to use the hack or not depends on the presence of the capability. Like
right.
after the node stage and node publish, or,
right.
or not.
Yes.
Mm.
That makes sense to me.
Okay, and okay, and how do you want the format to be? That's the second thing we could not agree on. Like,
I'm comfortable with a string and some documentation that explains that it's going to be OS specific. Similar to how we handle target path and publish path.
I think to decide on this, we need to actually think about the fields that we need for both Linux and Windows and see if we can make them a common field or not, if they're different enough.
I don't know anything about Windows actually. And Deep, you're there, right? So we don't, we are running everything as root on Windows right now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So in future, like I think Ben was also suggesting there's something called, what was it called? SIP or SID? I forgot.
SIDS.
Yeah, the SID, the ID.
Yeah, okay. So do you want them to be supplied here as like to node publish node stage?
Yeah, I mean, having that option would be great, like as a opaque string, as was being discussed.
Well, it wouldn't be an opaque string. It would be a string to be interpreted by the SP, but with an understanding that it's should be interpreted based on the OS where it's running.
Right, as in, yeah, pass as a string that the publisher, that the node agent for Windows can just translate and pass it in whatever way it sees fit. Yeah.
So at some point we'll need like pod spec to have that field or somewhere, like so that pod can know, the CO can know what SID to use to supply it to the SP. But pods don't have any field like that right now, right? So
wouldn't it be part of the status?
It should be in spec, ideally. That's where the GID is the group ID. If this group is in spec, not in status. So
yeah, so the field that's there for Windows is under like security context, just like you can have the run as UID, there is a similar run as username.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, there's nothing specifically for the group, to be honest.
But if you have like run as any, then the actual SID or GID or UID that it ends up running as is something that only kubelet knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's okay, right? If you have run as any in the spec and then kubelet picks one, that's the one that you want to pass down to the plugin. So you need to have access to it at the point you're calling node stage and node publish. But presumably kubelet can do that because it's the one making those calls.
Right.
I think, so we are at the top of the hour. I think the actual format of the fields, I think we're going to have to need some more discussion on this. Maybe
we need actual prototypes.
Yeah, maybe we can actually follow up in the PR or in the issue on the exact formats we want.
One quick thing before we just stop. So do you want this to be an alpha thingy or like it goes as?
I think we should make it alpha.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. So that when I open the PR, I have some, okay. Maybe, yeah, all right. Alpha is probably okay.
All right, sounds good. So Hamad, you have one more thing about adding secret to node expand. Does it seem pretty straightforward? We're just making it like all the other calls.
Yep. And there's already a PR opened by someone. So yeah, I personally don't have use case for it, and maybe other, but there have been use cases where people want to pass secrets to node expand volume RPC call, and it seems it's optional, seems straightforward change actually, unless, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So I think the next CSI meeting is going to be on January 6th. Does that seem okay? Are there any other urgent topics we want to discuss to have a meeting before then?
No, not from. I would really like to get a solution to the Azure file so that we can.
Yeah, sounds good. So maybe if you can open a PR and then we can just start looking at that and discussing there, I think that would be the best way to move forward.
Awesome. Okay.
All right, great. Then I will end this meeting and start the next meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.